Okay, so it's a little cold here in Florida today, so I decided I was gonna finally make the mushroom hot cocoa that Dr. Will Bushowitz talks about in his book Fiber Fueled, because the recipe looks really good and I'm always a fan of hot cocoa. So here we have some almond butter that we're gonna be using, cinnamon. I'm gonna use my Yakin syrup. It's like the healthiest sweetener out there. I'm gonna use the Sun Food maca mushroom mix, and the mushroom that's in here is reishi, which Dr. Bushowitz says is really good for immune boosting, which of course right now, because we can't get enough immune boosting. And then cacao powder, of course, essential for hot cocoa. I don't usually use almond milk, but I got this just for this recipe. It's not organic, but the ingredients are really clean, so I decided to go with minimal ingredients over organic. And it's actually from this side of town. I believe it's from New York, and it's only filtered water and almonds. So we have to fill the blender with basically all of these ingredients to pulverize everything. I'm skipping the salt because I think I have enough salt in my day, so I'm gonna skip that. All right, so here it is, all blended, and now it's time to warm it up. So we're making hot cocoa. So we have the cocoa, now we need to make it hot. You may be asking, why use raw almond butter and all these raw ingredients if you're gonna put on the stove? We're just making this warm for hot cocoa, and typically when you get raw stuff like unfiltered cold pressed olive oil, for example, or raw almond butter and things like that, they've gone through minimal processing with very little chemicals. And so we're trying to remove as many toxic chemicals out of our diets as possible, because they tend to lead to disruption in the body. And so it's just for cleanliness as opposed to necessarily enzymes when you're making a warm dish or a warm beverage like this. Okay, so it's the taste test time. And it's really, really good. I tried it when it was like just halfway warm, so still parts of it were cold, and it didn't taste that great. You could really taste the bitterness, and you could taste like all the ingredients. But now that it's like more on the hotter side, it's really nice. It's still bitter, but I don't mind bitter. And it's very warm and comforting. So worth a try. Make sure, if you want to continue to see more recipe videos, that you subscribe to this channel, you like and comment. Let me know what you think about this recipe and the content of this video. So first, we're making a salad. We're starting with the spring mix. I like to put this as the base. Get some big handfuls in there. Use the method for my shell, which is already washed and prepped in here. But I don't have much, but that's okay. And then seaweed snacks, I'm adding the sea salt and vinegar. After the spring mix, the seaweed, we have 4 to 5 pieces of sun-dried tomatoes. So let me get that together. Which mine are already julienne, so I actually didn't need to do anything. They're julienne, they're not in any oil. For the protein. And a tablespoon of olive oil. And we are going to add a little bit of garlic and salt because I like it. How big this salad is. Just gives you an idea. I got a big bowl and it looks great. So these are all the ingredients. Nutritional yeast, chickpea flour, we have garlic powder, onion powder, chickpea flour, nori rolls. This is not for this. It's not for this one. Carrot, liquid smoke.
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil.
What is for?
Not for this. We are prepped and ready.
Okay, so now you're gonna mix up the
black
chickpeas
bean
flour with all your seasoning that you just blended. With coconut oil. This is green onions, which is scallion as you know, and onion, yellow onions, diced carrots, diced potato, diced bell pepper. It should have been green, but we have red, we improvise. Diced tomato, diced celery, hot Scotch bonnet pepper, and this is curry powder, all-purpose seasoning, smoked paprika, and thyme, and a little pinch of salt and some molasses. And we are going to be browning our oxtail just now. Oh, and by the way, because we are making 2 different types, well, some people like fried. I don't like the oil, so what I did with these, and they are so delicious. You could actually eat them now. I put these in the oven for 20 minutes and they are nice and firm. So these gonna be cooked separately in the same sauce, but they won't be in oil. What was it first? The onion and stuff?
In first. So now mommy is adding
This is to the no oil.
to just see what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, Mom. So tell me, how do you feel about the process of making it and then how the taste came out? Like, were you surprised with the taste? And
No, I'm not surprised because all the ingredients that we use so far in it is ingredients other than the mushrooms. The ingredients is the same ingredients that we'd use if we're cooking oxtail. So no, I'm not surprised of the. It's just surprising to know that you can use a mushroom to make oxtail, and it tastes pretty good.
yeah, I think the biggest thing too was the rice paper, giving it that
Yes,
gelatinous,
yes, taste,
fleshy taste.
the gummy type, yeah,
Yeah.
taste, yeah. But
And
it's
how do you feel about it? Because there's also a taste of barbecue almost in it.
because of the yes, that's how it's supposed to taste. Yes, the smoked paprika, yes.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It's nice, very delicious. I like it.
So you made the saltfish, and you would give that.
But this one is the one without the oil.
Right.
So oil to some people tastes very good.
But to you, how you feel?
I just don't like too much oil in my food. But I would make it because I baked these. I didn't fry them. So if you think, I mean, it's up to your taste because the fried one gonna taste much better because when you brown them, you actually get that oxtail taste. So it's gonna have a different taste to it.
All right, so we'll see.
Okay.
All right, Mom. It's Thanksgiving Day, and here is everything we have on the table, ready to enjoy. Beet and carrots, vegan saltfish, vegan oxtail. This one is no oil. This one is with oil. Red lentil soup. We have salad, rice and peas sorrel, and zucchini bread and gizzada. And we have red and green cabbage. All right, Ma, so we just saw the hot cocoa that I made, which is actually out of Will Bushewitz's book, Fiber Fueled.
I'm still reading.
Yes. So I forget the actual name of it, but it was something hot cocoa, something with mushrooms. And I used that reishi mushroom mix from, anyway, you all saw the product that I used. And it was really good. So, you know, we've talked on the podcast recently about how it's cold. So, you know, having some warm things to drink, and this is a warm thing. I basically blended all the stuff and then I warmed it on the stove. And so, yes, technically at that point, it's not raw, but it's still a healthy, clean drink. And that's really, for me, ultimately, the purpose of like why I eat raw, other than the enzymes, is that I'm using raw ingredients and keeping things as minimally processed as possible, so that I'm not including in my body all this, you know, additives and toxic stuff that makes you feel horrible, you know, and accumulates toxins in the body that lead to dis-ease and, you know, dysbiosis and things like that, hormone imbalance, all sorts of things. So then we saw this salad that I made, which is salt and vinegar seasoned, lots of color, which is really great. I think that one of the great inspirations from this book, Raw Foods on a Budget, is a different way to utilize seaweeds and seaweed snacks. Like instead of just like a seasoning kind of, but it's like it's part of the salad, you know, and there's so many different varieties of salads that you can do with that.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny. I remember when we were promoting the Raw Food Health Empowerment Summit, a lot of the folks that I was interviewing with said, you know, oh, people think raw foods is just salads, but that can't be the case, right? And it's funny because no, raw foods is not just salads, but I do eat a lot of salads because I like salad. And like when you're eating raw foods, there's in the raw food community, there's a lot of emphasis on fruit. And I like salt. My body craves minerals. I think that's why I crave, I like salt and I crave salt. But I always have my fruit smoothie in the morning, and I have enough where it's like my sweet fix is pretty much done after my 32, ounce smoothie in the morning. So salads, that is it, lunch and dinner. But there's variety there, just like you have variety with smoothies,
Right.
And so I'm not anti-salad. I love salads. And like,
let me just say something right there. See, when
yeah,
people think of salad, all they're thinking of is lettuce and tomato. There is a large variety of salads. And I think we've spoken on that before. There's a lot of vegetable that can be eaten raw if you put it in the food processor or you grate it. So there's a lot of things that you can use and make a salad. And the meaning of salad to me is that you take a certain amount of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you put it in a bowl, that's salad.
yeah.
And you make your own favorite dressing and put on it. See, I like tangy stuff. People like sweet stuff. There's stuff out there for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
for me, like that's why I promote a high raw vegan diet. Because like for most folks, their base for their meals, lunch and dinner could be like bread or rice, which I don't eat. So my base is salad, my leafy greens, my kale. And if I'm doing something cooked, it's like quinoa,
Yeah.
But when you kind of flip it like that, it's like, okay, I'm not doing bread. Instead of bread, I'm going to do greens. Then whatever you're eating, that's the swap that you're making. And that's kind of like how you gradually get into it and it becomes sustainable, because you're not making a huge leap like, oh, I'm leaving my entire life of meals and doing this thing. No, you're just changing this one thing. Like everything, if you are eating rice every day, swap the rice for greens, for leafy greens. And like, what does that look like? And that's how you make the shift. That's like how you make the gradual shift. And for me, I love it. You cannot run out of salads to make. There's so many different combinations,
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And it's especially you mentioned salad dressings, which are the seasonings. I mean, there's an infinite amount of different seasoning combinations. So even my husband, like, oh my gosh, my husband is so good in the kitchen. The seasoning mix he made yesterday, I'm telling you.
Send me the recipe.
And the secret ingredient, he used something different. It's because I'm gonna have to tell you offline, because it's like it was so bomb. It was a combination that I have never had before.
I love your husband cooking. I'm afraid, Yes.
Yeah, he's very skilled. But this is something that's not even like, it's not out. No one is doing it. It's a fusion of Ethiopian and the normal seasonings we use with some Ethiopian seasonings. And it's like, whew. So just imagine, like, when you do all these different things, and even with the vegan saltfish, that was like a fusion of using like an Asian item of the seaweed to make a Jamaican dish.
Exactly.
It's like the possibilities.
It's God's creation. That's how he created the world.
Yes.
Exactly.
So it always stays exciting and fun.
And that's how the world's supposed to be. Yes.
Yes. And the vegan oxtails you made that we just saw how you labored blood, sweat, and tears.
This morning I was saying, Sam, that I'll never make again. I think what I don't like about it is the wrapping that goes over it, because I don't know.
The rice
it's a
paper.
mind thing.
That's another thing. Yeah.
I felt like I was eating plastic.
So the rice paper is made from rice, right? And that's what in Asian cuisines, they use to make different wraps and stuff. Some of them are meat wraps or like fish, sushi stuff. But I've normally had it like in veggie wraps, where they would, put your julienne vegetables, like your carrots and things, and then you wrap it in the rice paper and you dip it in like a soy sauce. And so that's a staple. So that's even another example of how this vegan Jamaican dish, it got veganized using Asian influence, because that rice paper is an Asian, you know,
right.
the Asian
Yes.
communities, they're using that in different ways. But that was what gave it the gelatinous, you know, texture to really make it taste like meat. And honestly, it tasted too much like meat for my
Well, you know, to be
palate.
quite honest with you, I enjoyed it. I loved it. But if somebody else make it, I think I'll enjoy it more. It's too much work.
Yeah, the meat
Yeah.
eaters at the table definitely loved it.
You know,
Yeah, and so for folks who are interested in trying it, I think it's Sister Vegan Cookbook, but I have her, not Sister Vegan, it's Sister Woman or something. But the book, the title of the recipe book is in the show notes. So make sure you click the link at the bottom of this video. If you're listening on Spotify or something like that, in the show notes, the link is there to the website with all the resources so you can try the recipe. She has a ton of Jamaican Caribbean dishes veganized. So it's definitely a fun thing to try your next
and
family get together.
I think someone have the same oxtail thing where they can put the bone in there and the bone is the
celery.
That's funny.
Because Jamaicans need the bone. They need the bone in the oxtail.
They need the bone, honey. They need the bone.
Okay. So, you know, January's Get Organized month. So we're getting organized with our clean eating, our goals, all the things that, you know, make us feel happy and fulfilled. Because 2022, I think we all deserve some happiness. We've been through a lot of stress and burnout and fatigue, and political tensions in our family and just all the things, right? And of course, COVID-19. This recent article that came out, I wanted to share with everyone from the Epoch Times, titled "Why COVID-19 is Much Worse for People Who Are Obese or Overweight." We've talked about this a lot, but I don't think we can talk about it enough, because throughout the pandemic, you know, they have been saying, different media has been putting out content, even some medical journals and things, about the relationship between obesity and COVID-19. And while I don't have TV, so the news I get in is curated, basically. You know, I get the skim in the morning. I get this one that's non-biased called 1840 or something, for non-biased news, but it just runs down like what's happening in the world. But when I was in New York, you know, the news is always on, and it seems like mainstream media is not really talking about all the things. They're pretty much focused on their talking points, and they're not really doing a broad reach. So I wanted to bring some stuff into play for folks who may not be seeing some of this stuff coming out from the medical community. So nearly 40% of Americans right now are obese, right? That's not overweight, right? There's healthy weight, overweight, obese, then morbid obesity, right? So 40% are obese, right? According to the Mayo Clinic, people at risk for severe COVID include older adults, older than, you know, people over 65. They have more than 81% of deaths from COVID-19 happen to people over 65. Patients with heart and lung conditions, people with weakened immune systems, diabetics, and those who are battling obesity. Okay. Then March 2021, a CDC study discovered that approximately 78% of people who were hospitalized for COVID were overweight or obese. You know, this article goes on and on. They reference the Journal of American Medical Association that pulls some other data showing that compared to people at a healthy weight, those with high body mass indexes had a 61% increased risk of death and a 33% risk of increased risk of hospitalizations. The more severe the obesity, the worse the COVID outcomes. So it's pretty clear in the medical community. I mean, this is not a woo-woo alternative facts or whatever. We have Dr. David Cass, a professor of cardiology at Johns Hopkins, telling the New York Times that fat provides a place for virus to hang out and replicate and wreak havoc on the immune system. And this is what they're noticing right now. So these are, you know, what I think most of us would consider reputable sources, reputable people with credentials, reiterating what I've been saying about who is being affected, right? And so that's why I've been really frustrated. And this is part of like the burnout that I'm dealing with right now, just to be really honest, is that somehow America found the money to give away free vaccines, yet we have communities under food apartheid. Food apartheid is what is happening in this country in 2022, where communities don't have access to fruits and vegetables, right? The stuff that actually builds your immune system. There's a nonprofit I'm working with who's making appeals to the government on the Farm Bill to focus on fiber-rich foods. These fiber-rich foods, even more so, like more than over 90% of Americans do not eat the minimum required fruits and vegetables, right? But small steps. Let's go, at least instead of all these subsidies, to animal products that give us nothing but saturated fats. You know, how about subsidies for fiber foods? Let's get there first, you know, fiber-rich foods. And then on top of that, you know, this article, it's a really good article that I would love for all of you to read and share with your local politicians who are supposed to be representing you, because they talk about fat, right? So it says fat tissue is full of immune cells. So in someone who is lean, the tissue secretes anti-inflammatory and protective factors. However, in someone who's obese, the fat tissue becomes unhealthy and dysfunctional and secretes chemical signals that promote inflammation. That seems to be what's happening when obese people come down with COVID-19. And then they make the connection that glyphosate, so glyphosate is an herbicide, and they're saying it causes obesity. And obesity is a strong indicator of glyphosate poisoning. Now, the only way to avoid glyphosate is to eat organic, right?
Exactly.
That's the only way that we could have with a clear conscience that we're avoiding it, because the USDA organic produce is not, by law, cannot have that in there, right? But in some areas, even in New York City of all places, it's hard to get, right?
They have a new device coming out, Sam, which I think everybody heard about it yesterday. I was watching it. It's a device come out. I don't remember the name of it, but it will detect all those chemicals in your food before you even eat it. And I'm looking forward to it.
But the thing is that we know, that's great, the detection. What I need is for our politicians to actually take action and make organic foods, organic fruits and vegetables more accessible to everyone, like financially and physically. Like literally, even if you have the money, there are communities in New York City that can't even get, like, they need to have a car and leave their neighborhood, leave the city, go into Long Island or somewhere else to, you know, to get organic produce. And I just think it's so crazy. If that could happen in New York, just imagine in rural communities where money and resources is even harder to come by.
Yeah, but we need the volume of people to get to these congresspersons or people that, you know, the people we put in office to step up on these things. But people have to voice these things because that's the only way that they can know about it.
Right. So then there's the agricultural.
Sending messages or letters to the churches. And the churches, the pastors or whoever is involved in those communication can give feedback to the congressperson. Like one church will speak for 400 people, because that's how it works. But one individual cannot make a change. The change have to come from, if you are involved with a club, a church, community, wherever you're involved with, community meetings, or the letter have to come from there to the congressperson.
Yeah, and I'm going to push back a little because one person can make a change. Because even if you, like, for example, when you talk about a church, anybody at a church can start a food co-op, right? Like you can go to the church and say, hey, we can, for the congregants, buy organic produce in bulk from a supplier, whoever supplies other places, maybe other stores that aren't nearby, but they can get for, because that's kind of way the food system works, right? For example, like when we had Earth Healing Cafe, the bulk of our organic produce was coming from a distributor called Goodness Greenness, right? How do you find these things out? You make phone calls. You talk to your grocery store. You see they have some organic stuff on the shelves. Where do you get your organic produce? You know, just start asking people and talking to people. And if you can buy in bulk, right? And then give it out. If the church can't afford to just give away organic produce, then whoever comes in and buys into this co-op, they just come to the church and pick up their stuff or whatever, right? But the whole point is you get rid of the middleman, which is the grocery store, and you're dealing with the distributor, or you can deal with a local farmer or something like that. You know, you figure it out, you know. And this book, Raw Foods on a Budget, has a lot of great resources on cutting costs and things like that. But I think like the emphasis really, we need to focus on organic foods and minimize our consumption of chemicals. This is really killing people.
It is. But I know that the churches supply food and you know, for people who is in need, you know, people who can't afford, you know, to even go to the supermarket. And yes, they're getting the food that is not organic. And this is the reason why I say if the churches will chip in, send a letter to the congressperson that they can supply these older people, because there's always seniors going to these places, but they're getting all the food that is not good for their body.
Yeah. And you know what? The churches need education. So I know everyone listening to our podcast right here, right? And it's you I'm talking to, right? You, the listener, the viewer who's watching and listening, all of these resources, this article that has all the verbiage, like literally, I took this article, I reached out to Cory Booker, I reached out to some of the nonprofits, Environmental Working Group. I reached out to.
Did you reach out to my Gregory Meeks?
I reached out to Gregory because he needs to fix New York. Okay. Because come on now, you know.
We have a new mayor who is into healthy eating. So
yes, and he is hard to get. Like, I don't want to go through his campaign website. I was looking all over trying to figure out how to connect to him through his now mayoral email, and I couldn't figure it out fast enough. I'm pretty sure if I maybe spent a couple more days on it. So I skipped him. But yeah, if you go to one of the nonprofits that I'm really, you know, talk to a lot is Agricultural Fairness Alliance, AFA. They're the ones that I referenced. They're working on the Farm Bill. And they have this section of their website that says take action, where you can go. There's a section to find your congressperson in in the House of Representatives. You put in your zip code and you can find your person and reach out to that person, like email them. The verbiage is there in this article, making the case for why we need to be supporting getting organic fruits and vegetables to communities and make it more accessible. In this time of COVID-19, where people have been dying, the money is not the issue. We need political will. We need the politicians to understand that we want this for our communities. This is not just it would be good to have. Like, no, this is life and death, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to leave you with that, since we're getting organized and we're mobilizing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if you had any closing words, Mom.
We're just looking forward to the future and all the goodness that's coming through this podcast. So, and there's a lot of good stuff coming up. So we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yes, like Raw for Lent coming up.
Raw for Lent.
And also this month, I have some slots open on the calendar. So if you'd like to connect for a health consultation, definitely hit me up, and I look forward to talking to you. So we'll see you guys soon.